Please be aware, in this podcast series we talk about all areas of safeguarding, which some people may find upsetting. So please make sure you're okay listening to today's topic. Be mindful of those around you, such as children, that you might not want to listen in. Hi, I'm SSS Safeguarding Director Sam Preston.
And I'm former head teacher and content author Sarah Spinks.
Hi everyone, today we're focusing on a critical but often overlooked aspect of safeguarding: how to write effective safeguarding reports. Schools and educators are often required to write safeguarding reports for two main reasons. Firstly, to document concerns about a child at risk, or to update governance on safeguarding within the organisation. But how do we ensure these reports are clear, accurate, and effective? So this is such an important topic. A well-written safeguarding report can make all the difference in protecting a child or improving safeguarding practice in a school.
So, Sam, let's start with the basics. Why are safeguarding reports so important?
Well, there's two key reasons. Reporting concerns about a child. So this type of report helps other professionals, social workers, police and safeguarding teams, assess and respond to risks of abuse, neglect or exploitation. Secondly, as I've said, updating governance on safeguarding practices. So schools also need to provide annual safeguarding reports to governors, ensuring compliance with safeguarding laws and monitoring trends within the school. And I should also say that they may also be required to write a report if there's a serious incident for governance.
Absolutely. Yeah. So whether it's about an individual child or whole school safeguarding, these reports inform decisions and drive action.
Exactly. So clear, factual reporting helps ensure children get the support and protection that they need.
So let's focus on the first type, so a safeguarding report about a child at risk. What should schools consider before they even start writing?
That's a great question. So before writing, because we often don't think about that, we just kind of plough into it. So before writing, you should identify the purpose. So what type of safeguarding issue are you reporting? Does it involve abuse, neglect, exploitation, or another concern? Then understand the legal and organisational requirements. So are there specific timescales that must be met? For example, in a Section 47 inquiry, there's very strict reporting deadlines. And then thirdly, I'd say gather the key information. So this includes the child's name, age, and any known vulnerabilities, a chronological record of incidents, observations, and disclosures, and then dates, times, locations, and who was involved.
So I think preparation is the key, isn't it? Once all the information is gathered, how should the report be structured then?
Well, the best approach is to use a clear, logical format, with headings and bullet points. A strong report should include a brief summary, so briefly outline the concern and who's involved. A chronological account, so detail events in order, including observations, disclosures and responses. Relevant background information, so if a child has a history of concerns, for example, that should be included. Also, the actions that have been taken so far. So document what steps have already been taken. Have referrals been made? That sort of thing. And then finally, recommendations for further action. Should a social worker or external agency be involved?
That makes sense. What about language? We know that language is really key. How important is it really in those safeguarding reports?
It's crucial, and I would just be mindful here that whatever you write in these reports, it could end up being submitted as evidence if something is very serious. So it's really important that any report that you write is factual and objective. So Stick to what was seen or heard, not opinions. Be clear and professional, avoid jargon, acronyms, or school-specific terms. For example, instead of writing FSM, spell out free school meals, so external professionals understand. And often some of these acronyms can be used across organisations, but they can mean very different things.
Yeah.
And then finally, think about confidentiality, follow GDPR guidelines, but do remember that safeguarding concerns override data protection if sharing information, if that's necessary to protect a child.
That's a really useful breakdown. But what happens once the report's written?
Well, it must be dated, signed and submitted following schools reporting procedures, and a copy should also be added to the child protection records.
Now let's talk about the second type of report, the safeguarding updates for governance. How do these reports differ?
Well, governance reports provide the bigger picture view. So they're not about specific cases or children usually. I mean, you may have, if it's a serious case incident, you may anonymously write about a specific case. But usually they're the informative things like annual reports. So that's to help in reviewing safeguarding policies, incidents and training. And then there's incident-led reports, as I've said. After a serious safeguarding issue, governors may require an in-depth review because they will be required to revisit their policy and protocols if a serious incident occurs. So that it doesn't matter if the policy is not due to be reviewed for 6 months, 8 months, whatever. If there's a serious incident, the policy has to be revisited immediately.
So who are these reports actually for?
Well, typically they're first shared with the named safeguarding governor, who then in turn presents the findings to the full governing board.
And what should these reports include?
Well, a general governance safeguarding report that should confirm compliance, so show how the school meets safeguarding laws and policies. It should detail safeguarding practices, outline, any new procedures introduced since the last report, provide staff training data. So how many staff have completed safeguarding training and the different types of safeguarding training. And that might just be pulling reports. For instance, in the SSS learning system, you can provide whole school staff training reports. It'll generate a report for you, which you could just attach as an appendix. Yeah. It should highlight any key concerns. So without naming individuals, report any emerging trends. So, for instance, you might see there might have been a rise in child-on-child abuse, so there might have been an incident of serious violence or knife crime or something like that. It should also explain any actions taken. So think about detailing how school has protected pupils' welfare. And then it should also include any recommended improvements. So that's something that's often omitted, but it's really important. So in the report, suggest any policy updates or training needs, get that in the report.
Yeah, so I suppose these reports help governors assess risk, improve policies and strengthen safeguarding practice, informing them,
Yeah, exactly, Sarah. And under new legal requirements, they must also include data on the use of force or restraint in schools.
That's all quite new as well.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up, what are your top tips for writing a strong safeguarding report then?
Well, that's a great question. So I could go on forever, but you've limited me to 5. So here we go. Here's my top 5. 1, be clear and concise. Use bullet points and headings to keep reports readable, keep them focused. 2, stick to the facts. Describe what's been seen, heard, recorded, avoid opinions. Use professional language, no acronyms, no jargon. Think I'm writing for a wider audience. Ensure confidentiality. So as I've said, follow GDPR guidelines, but prioritise safeguarding. And then check accuracy. And finally, submit on time. That's a little added one in there. So sign, date, and store reports securely.
That's a very solid checklist.
So effective reporting, it strengthens safeguarding, whether it's protecting an individual child or improving school-wide policies.
I suppose the key takeaway today is that safeguarding reports must be clear, factual and structured. And I suppose they play that vital role, really, don't they, in protecting children, improving school policies.
Yeah, that's it exactly. Schools must ensure staff are trained in effective reporting, because poorly written reports can delay action and that can put children at risk.
Oh, thanks, Sam. That's really good insights today. I'm sure people find incredibly useful. I know I would have done.
Thanks, Sarah. I hope this will help listeners feel more confident when writing safeguarding reports. If you found this episode useful, share it with the other colleagues and your safeguarding leads, and we'll be back for more safeguarding discussions.